This movie does for evangelical Christianity what 80 for Brady does for the NFL.
So we felt the need to catch up with Jesus Revolution after it did just astronomically well at the box office over the weekend. It was expected to make only about $6 million, ended up making closer to $16 million. Alonzo and I both happened to have seen it for various other things we do outside of here. So we thought, let's just have a quick chat about this one and just try to figure out, like, why is it doing so well? What do we think of it? So Alonzo, please tell us about it.
When God walks in here, brings me a hippie, I'll ask him what it's all about. Because I do not understand.
This house has a very good vibe.
Jesus Revolution is based on a true story, a thing that happened in California in the early 70s. A guy named Chuck Smith, who's played here by Kelsey Grammer, ran a church that was kind of, falling off in popularity, not really, dragging in the folks. And he's very skeptical about the hippies. The hippies were a big thing at this moment in the culture, until he meets a guy named Lonnie Frisbee, who had been, deep into the drug culture, and then on an acid trip, they don't tell you this part of the movie, found Jesus, and then became a very fervent proselytizer, and kind of began the whole sort of Jesus freak movement. Chuck Smith's church begins welcoming in hippies over the protests of some of his more conservative members, including a young guy named Laurie. And together, the three of them sort of launched this movement, kind of going back to the roots of Jesus's message and making it accessible to this generation of young and disaffected baby boomers who were maybe looking for answers and looking for a different kind of spirituality than their parents practiced. Set in motion the contemporary Christian music movement with a band called Love Song, and basically just really changed the evangelical church in America, in a lot of significant ways. I am not an evangelical. I was raised Catholic. If you want to hear more from that angle, Dave White, who is an ex-evangelical, and I had the host of the Veterans of Culture Wars podcast on Linoleum Knife, and we had a long discussion about this movie. I would urge you to check that out, but Christy and I will be talking about it from our own perspectives.
Right. I am also a former Catholic, and so I am definitely not the choir to which this movie is preaching. I do not believe, but I have seen a whole lot of faith-based movies in my life.
Yes.
Right. And I've always wondered what would happen if one came along that was actually well made, because so frequently, like, they are edited in a really erratic way, and the scripts are really clunky, and it's very preachy.
Camera
and
work is bad.
The lighting is bad. Everything is on the nose, like everything from Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas to an earlier film from this director, Jon Erwin, called Mom's Night Out. Like, Jon Erwin and his brother have made a lot of movies together. They did not both co-direct this one, but they've come a long way since Mom's Night Out. They also made a documentary. They also made a documentary about the same topic called The Jesus Music, which came out, I want to say, in 2021, which is essentially an extended infomercial for the power of contemporary Christian music. And they interview like Amy Grant and other like veterans of the
DC
genre.
Talk pours the tea in that movie. That's kind of fun.
That's right. You saw this too. So, they go back to the nugget of the origin of this with this film of like this unlikely intersection between hippies and Christians. And I was shocked at how good this was, because, it's so well made from a production standpoint. It looks spectacular. I want to mention very specifically the cinematographer, Akis Konstantinopoulos, because it's got this really dreamy kind of golden California haze to it. Both from the concerts and the scenes of like baptism at Pirates Cove down in Orange County. It's got this really vivid kind of like ethereal sense of place. Like it's gauzy and like a dream, but it also immerses you in the middle of it. And I was really impressed with the look of it. Kelsey Grammer is very good in this. Jonathan Roumie, who plays Lonnie Frisbee, is really charismatic and really funny.
He by the way plays Jesus on a really popular TV show called The Chosen, and is several decades older than Lonnie Frisbee, but like has that look, everybody
just
talks
like
about
him.
Lonnie Frisbee looked like Jesus. And so, it's apt casting, and he's bringing in a lot of fans. No, you're absolutely right. Of the contemporary mode, like wave of faith-based movies that we've seen in the last decade or two, this is far and away like the highest level of craft I have seen in one. It looks like a real movie. It's shaped like a real movie. The performances, are cohesive. You're right. The lighting is gorgeous. There's a lot here that is leaps and bounds beyond like what you'd see in a God's Not Dead, sequel, for instance.
Right. No, for sure. Jonathan Roumie, also, we were talking in our news segment about how Mark Wahlberg is involved with the Hallow app and is doing this like 40-day Lent challenge. Jonathan Roumie is one of the people on the Hallow app that you can pray with. So he's like across platforms. He's Jesus. Eventually, though, it has to reaffirm what it is saying for the audience that came to see that, right? Like this has got an A+ cinema score because it completely delivers what its target audience wants to see. They want to go in there and feel good and have their faith affirmed and all of that. It dabbles lightly in some interesting tension when Lonnie is like getting way too big for his britches and is like doing healings, right?
Yes, and
like
prophecy.
Is totally working the room, and it all seems like bullshit. And of course it is. But he tells himself, like his ego's gotten so out of control, he tells himself that is the way that like the spirit works through him, and he wants to work the room and all that.
What you call bullshit, a lot of evangelicals would call charismatic.
Well, okay, that's a really nice euphemism for what is happening here. But like to his credit, Kelsey Grammer's character, Chuck Smith, like calls him on it, and they have what is surprisingly some actual friction in a movie of a genre where it's usually just like happy, feel good, nice, and ultimately affirming. And so I was surprised by that, but it also leaves out a whole lot about Lonnie Frisbee and who he really was.
Yes, it does. Lonnie Frisbee was a gay man, and you would never know that watching this movie. Although, as Dave and I were discussing afterwards, he was like, it's probably for the best that they didn't even go there, because if they had, they would have gone there in a really ugly way. Like, and I've seen interviews with the real Greg Laurie and stuff, and the way they talk about Lonnie Frisbee's homosexuality, when they do begrudgingly, it's always couched in, well, God uses imperfect people. And, yes, he turned back to sin, but at his deathbed, he, repented and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, the modern evangelical movement cannot wrap its head around the fact that this guy who was hugely influential and made a huge difference within the church was a homo. Sorry, guys, that's the truth. Deal with it. This movie does not deal with that. It's completely erased and left out. So that's a thing that's really annoying. But you asked earlier, why is this movie doing so well? And I think that part of it is that this movie does for evangelical Christianity what 80 for Brady does for the NFL.
Yep.
It presents the best version, the most idealized version, the one that you want to believe is real. You want to believe that there is an evangelical church in America that actually follows the teachings of Jesus, the stuff that is written down, the red words in the Bible, that is about charity and outreach and taking care of people and doing good works, and not about like being assholes who make lives difficult for people like me. Everybody in this movie, as idealistic as they were at the time, they all voted for Ronald Reagan. So, but you want to believe
Orange County in the 80s.
Exactly.
But
you want to believe that like hippie version of the evangelical church that's open and welcoming and making a difference, a positive difference in people's lives. They want to believe that still exists, and not the gross, like Trump voting version that really is the thing that's happening in this country.
Right.
So
everyone's very welcoming. Everyone's very kind and hugging and crying together.
I think that's part of the reason these people, the people of the evangelism are running out to see this movie, is because it makes them feel good about a thing that happened once that they like to pretend is still happening.
What is your number?
I give it a 6.
I'm saying 7. It does what it does pretty well. So Jesus Revolution, will you see it? It's in theaters.